Let me give you a quote here. I want you to guess what movie it is from. Is April Mazingo in here? Okay, good. She would know it right away, so I'm not gonna. I was gonna tell her she couldn't guess. What would you do if you were stuck in one place? Every day was exactly the same, and nothing that you did mattered. Groundhog Day. Bill Murray. You shot Bill Murray. Bill Murray. One of my favorites. This is a movie made before many of you were born. 1993. Bill Murray. I was 15 years old when this movie came out. It's called Groundhog Day. And it is about a reporter who wakes up, starts living out his day, goes to bed, and when he wakes up the next morning, it is the exact same day that he lived before. And at first, it's just freaking him out, and he doesn't know what's going on, and he thinks he's going crazy, and then he goes to sleep that night, and the next day it starts again. And we don't know exactly how long this goes on, but it goes long enough for him to become a wonderful pianist, and he can actually play piano really well. So he must obviously, it could have gone for years as far as we know, but every single day was the exact same day. And this is the quote that I took from that movie. What would you do if you were stuck in one place? Every day was exactly the same, and nothing that you did mattered. What a horrible, horrible existence that would be. And while the premise of this movie is obviously not in reality, I think that many people sometimes get stuck in thinking that that's kind of how their life is. You get up, go through the same routine, do the same thing, go to the same place with the same people, and it's just nothing even close to exciting ever happens, and it's just the same thing over and over and over again. The truth is, as we're going to see tonight from the words of Jesus, each day that we live is a set, given amount of time, and there is not enough time for everything, but there is enough time for things that matter and need to get done. Let me repeat that again. Each day that we live is a set, given amount of time, and there is not enough time for everything, but there is enough time for the things that matter and need to be done. Our responsibility is to view each day correctly. Our responsibility is to view every single day and order it the right way and think about it the right way and utilize every day, as we saw last week, for the glory of God. Jesus says, I'm letting Lazarus die, and his entire family mourn, and his entire family go through what they're going through. And I'm doing it for God's glory, and for his glory, he said. He equated himself with God. For my glory, and for the good of the people that I love. I love Lazarus and Mary and Martha, and that's why I've let Lazarus die, because I love them. And I want them to see the glory of God. And our responsibility is to view every day correctly and to utilize every day for the glory of God. Tonight's text, Jesus is going to be talking to his disciples about his plan. I want you to read with me verses 7 through 10. Now remember, a messenger comes to Jesus and says, Jesus, your friend Lazarus that you love deeply is severely sick. I mean, he could die at any moment. He is very, very sick. And Jesus says, don't worry, this sickness is not going to lead to death. And then he stays where he's at for 2 days until Lazarus dies. And then he says what he's going to say here in verse 7. Listen to this. Then, after this, he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." And the disciples said to him, "Rabbi, teacher, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and you're going to go there again?" And Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in a day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of the world, of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him." I want us to talk about what Jesus means by these words. But before we do, I want to talk about this strange decision Jesus makes. This is a very strange decision. Jesus has just found out that Lazarus is very ill. He's going to let him die. It's going to be to the glory of God. It's going to be for their good. Do the disciples know Lazarus is dead? No, they do not. The disciples do not know Lazarus is dead. Now, Jesus does. Jesus knows by the time we get there, he's going to be dead for like 4 days. The disciples don't know that, and Jesus hasn't told them that yet. All Jesus says is, we're going to go back to Judea. Now, this was maddening for the disciples. This was crazy for the disciples. He says in verse 7, we're going to go to Judea again. But here's the problem in the minds of the disciples, thinking just like we all would have thought. In John chapter 10, verse 31 through 39, which is the chapter right before this, right? Just a few days earlier, Jesus was in Judea, and the religious leaders riled up a mob to pick up stones and kill Jesus by stoning. And Jesus says, let's go back. And the disciples are thinking, that's crazy talk, Jesus. We just escaped with our lives. You just got out of there, and now you're saying, let's go back. To them, this was a very, very strange decision. They don't understand it, and they let Jesus know that they don't understand it. They're thinking, at least, this doesn't make sense. And at worst, Jesus has lost his mind. Why would you go back to a place and in their mind, risk your life at the very place we just came from? Now, I thought about this as a side note. The disciples have already seen Jesus heal somebody from afar. The disciples know if you want to heal Lazarus, you don't even have to go to Judea to do it. You could just say the word from here, and he'll be healed all the way back in Judea. We don't even have to, in Bethany where he lives, we don't even have to go. Just say the word. And so for them, it's so confusing and they don't understand. Why would you do this, Jesus? Why would you head back to a place where the people want you dead? And that brings us to a strange question Jesus asks. One thing I love about Jesus when I read the Gospels is that he's always working on so many different levels, right? He's got this plan to go to Bethany and raise Lazarus from the dead and everyone see the glory of God. It's going to be good for the people. Like, he knows all that. But at the same time, he's not so focused on where he's going and what he's doing that he's not in the present to minister to the people around him. Does that make sense? Like, sometimes we're so focused on where we're going that we might miss like the people right around us that need us in that moment. Jesus knows where he's going. He has put his head down and he's like, I'm going to Judea, and I'm going to go to Bethany, and I'm going to raise Lazarus from the dead. That's the plan. That's what God wants. And even though I'm headed that way and I'm determined to go that way, I still am going to teach and minister to the disciples right around me. And so he asked them a question in order to do this. Seems like a very strange question. Verse 9. Are there not 12 hours in a day? Now we hear that and we're like, Jesus doesn't even know how many hours are in a day. The Romans and the Jews did not have precise timepieces right back then. It's not like they had the ability to mark hours of days by 60 minutes the way we do. All right, we've got them on our phones, we've got them on our watches. I mean, we got them all over the place. We're able to know the precise time. Well, they didn't have that. So what they did is they marked their day by nighttime and daytime. And they were like, listen, approximately the sun stays up for about 12 hours. So We got 12 hours of daylight, and guess what we're going to do during those 12 hours? We're going to work. And when the sun goes down, we're going to stop working, and we're going to go in our houses. But while the sun is up, we work. And when the sun comes back up, now we've got another day. So they viewed their day oriented around when they worked. Sun's up, we work. Now, any kind of agricultural job, they still work that way today, right? I've never lived on a farm, but I've seen enough movies and heard enough stories to know that if you live on a farm, guess when you get up to start doing work? When the sun comes up, you're getting up when the sun comes up. You're ready to roll when the sun comes up. So you're up before the sun, you get ready, and when that sun's up, you're already out there working. And you stay out there and you bust your tail until the sun goes down and come in. That's it. So this isn't too far from even some of the agricultural society that we live in today, especially here in Texas. But this seems like a weird question to deal with the strange decision he's made. They're questioning him, and his response is, aren't there 12 hours in a day? That really doesn't help us out too much, Jesus. I don't really understand how that question helps us out at all. I don't get how you asking us about daylight means anything. So it seems like a very, very weird question. But Jesus is going to follow it up and gives us a little bit of insight. Listen to how he follows it up, the end of verse 9 and in verse 10. Listen to this. After he says, are there not 12 hours in a day? Then he says this. If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble. Okay? We understand that, right? If you're outside during the day, you can see where you're going. Because he sees the light of the world. If anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. Now, from just a astronomical level, okay, just from a, sun, moon, stars level, Jesus seems to be saying, we do our work during the day because that's when we can see. And you don't stumble during the day, you know where you're going during the day. You don't do stuff at night because at night you stumble and you're full. Like on a basic astronomical level, that's what Jesus seems to be saying. But there's two things here that make me go, I think he's talking about something spiritual and something a little bit deeper. Two things. Number one, he says this. If anyone walks the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of the world. That's a weird way to say the sun, right? If he's just talking about light coming from the sun, light of the world seems to be a weird way to say it. And in fact, in John chapter 8, verse 12, with his disciples around him, guess who Jesus says is the light of the world? Himself. So immediately those disciples should go, okay, I think he's talking more than just about the sun. I mean, if he just wanted to say sun, he could have said sun. But now he says light of the world, and he's already told us he's the light of the world. So that should let us know there's a spiritual level this is working on. And then he says this, but if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. Now they got to be going, well, he can't be talking about sunlight. Sunlight doesn't get in us, right? It doesn't infuse into our being and make it burn our skin, and we need the vitamin D that comes from it, right? Is it D? Yeah. Vitamin D that comes from it. But it doesn't go in us. So Jesus has to be thinking here about something spiritual. Now, for Jesus, I think he's talking about himself in one respect, and I think he's talking about the disciples in one respect. And listen carefully to this. I think what Jesus is saying is, I don't have to be afraid to go to Judea. Because I know that I am safe as long as I'm in the Father's will. And the daylight period of his life was not yet done. Okay, so you gotta stay with the analogy that Jesus is using, right? As long as it's daylight, what are we doing? We're working. As long as it's daylight, we're working. Jesus is saying, listen, it's still daylight in my life. Like the dark time of my death and crucifixion and stuff, it's not time for that yet. So the darkness of my day, of my life hasn't come. I'm still in the day. And while it is day, guess what I'm going to be doing? I'm going to be about my Father's will. I am not going to be afraid of the Jewish leaders in Judea who want me dead because my ministry is still going on. I've still got stuff to do, and so I'm going to go to Judea and I'm not going to be afraid of them. I'm walking in the light. It would be wrong for Jesus to quit now. It would be wrong for Jesus to start being afraid of what man can do to him. His 12 hours of daylight, so to speak, hadn't been filled up yet. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do business. I'm going to be about God's business. And then I think he's talking about him being the light of the world, right? He says, I am the light of the world. And then he says, and if you're walking in the daylight, and if you're walking in the darkness and you're stumbling around, that means the light's not in you. Immediately the disciples should say, well, I know that you are the light of the world, and we're following you, and so in a sense, you're with us. I think that's exactly what Jesus is saying to them. I think Jesus is saying to them, listen, you don't need to be afraid as long as you're with me. As long as you're with me, I'm in the light, I'm walking and doing my work in the light, and you are with me, you don't need to be afraid either. And until your day is done, guess what you need to be doing? You need to be about God's business too. So Jesus is saying, I'm going to be about God's business because the daylight of my life has not yet ended. My time is not yet up. I'm not going to be afraid of what the Jews can do to me. I made those rocks. They can't kill me if I don't want them to kill me. In fact, on multiple occasions, the Bible says that the Jewish leaders picked up rocks to kill Jesus, and he literally just vanished from underneath their eyes. Like they were there, they were going to kill him, and then they're like, where'd Jesus go? He's gone. So Jesus is not worried because he knows I'm doing the Father's will. And then he's turning to the disciples and he's like, and I'm the light of the world. And so as long as you're walking with me, you're walking in the light. The light is with you and in you, and you're following me, and you're supposed to be about God's business with me. So I think this is how he's encouraging the disciples, because they're thinking, Jesus says, let's recap, Jesus says, let's go to Judea. And the disciples are thinking, we just left there not too long ago and they wanted to kill you. Why in the world would we go back there? Do you have a death wish? And Jesus turns around and says, listen, as long as I'm in my Father's will and my time's not up, they can't touch me. I'm not going to be afraid of them. My time is in God's hands. And I'm going to go and I'm going to do my work, and I'm going to do God's will, and I'm going to do God's business while I have this time. And by the way, disciples, I'm the light of the world. You're not walking around in the darkness, stumbling around. You're following me. And as long as you're following me, you need to be about God's business too. And then lastly, I want you to see a strange view of time. I want you to think about how we as Christians think about time, okay? I was just thinking about this today. It's like, how do we view time? On one hand, we say, time has no end. Right? Christians, think about it. On one hand, we say, time has no end. We're going to live forever with Jesus. Like our body's going to die, but we're going to get resurrected from the dead. We'll talk more about that next week. We're going to get resurrected from the dead, or the week after. We're going to get resurrected from the dead, and we will be with Jesus forever. And so time has no end. And so in a sense, we live for eternity. Right? There is a sense in which us as Christians live for eternity. But then on the other hand, we believe that time really matters think that we should, and we say we should, live now in the present, and we shouldn't go, all that matters is eternity, so we don't have to worry about how we're living now. Right? So there's this two-handed approach that we take to time. Yes, we live forever, and forever is the ultimate, but that ultimate forever timeline that we're going to be on with Jesus on the new earth forever and ever and ever doesn't make us go, well, today then doesn't matter. Right? It's a strange view of time, because what we're saying is the ultimate time is forever and ever and ever, but it's also for right now. So the way that we need to look at time is that the Bible teaches both of these things. They come together in this understanding. Listen carefully. What we do today in the daylight of our lives, in the 12 hours of our lives, what we do today matters not only for today, which it does, it echoes into eternity. What you do for someone now, what you do for the kingdom of God now, what you do for your brothers and sisters in Christ and for lost people, and how you serve and how you give and how you act like Jesus now, it impacts the now because everyone's going to be affected by that, but it echoes into the future. It reverberates into eternity that we're not even living in yet. What a strange view of time we have as Christians. That's what the Bible teaches. So I want to end with giving us a few things to think about in regards to ourselves and in the light of the statement that Jesus makes tonight about time and about our work and about our duties. I want to mention three things, so listen very carefully. And I didn't even leave blanks in your notes, I just wrote them out for you. So they're going to be up on the screen, they're on your papers. And I want you to catch this. Number one, God gives us a certain amount of time, and nothing can shorten it. God gives every single one of us an allotted, specific amount of time that we have to live on this side of Jesus' second coming. My life has already been set of how many days I'm going to live. The Bible says in Psalm 139, says that God ordains all the days of our lives before we have even lived one of them. Which means before you existed, God had already planned out the amount of days you are going to exist on this side of eternity. Now, this means a few things. It means you can't die before your time. You cannot die before your time. God has set it up. So, before you start thinking all kinds of stupid stuff like, well, throw themselves in front of a truck and get hit by a truck. Well, don't worry about questions like that. The point is not, well, I can live like an idiot and it won't matter. It's not the point. The point is actually the very opposite of that. The point is, since God has ordained my days, I do not have to fear man. That's what Jesus does, right? Jesus goes, my day's not over with. The time that God's given me to work's not done yet. I'm not going to fear what the Jews can do to me and you to them. And that's the attitude we should have. You know what? I want to be about God's business. And I do not have to worry about what man is going to do to me. I do not have to worry about what man is going to think about me. We have, on one hand, the blessing of living in America. On the other hand, there are many things that we have not experienced that has blessed the church throughout the years. We haven't suffered persecution here in the United States of America the way that our brothers and sisters in Christ have experienced it and are experiencing all around the world. When they go to church in China, they are risking their life. Every single time. Now, you didn't get in your car and head up here and thought, you know what? I wonder if I get to church, if there's going to be people there that are going to arrest me and execute me. But there are Christians your age in China that are, in fact, living that reality out. And if they do not believe God is in charge of my life and God has ordained my life, then you would just live in so much fear that you wouldn't even be able to gather together because you'd be so afraid of what would happen. But instead what they do is they say, we're going to go to church. And it's an underground church. We're going to hide so they don't know we're doing it. But we're going to go to church and we're going to put our lives in the hand of God. And if it be our time, it be our time. And that's the reality they live with. And so we have to live in that reality, even though we don't experience the same kind of persecution that they do, or the same kind of suffering they do. We still have that fear that rises up in us. Right? What if I do this? What are these people going to think about me? If I live for Jesus here, what are they going to say about me? If I act like this, what are they going to think about me? Do not fear what man thinks about you. Who cares? We live in a society that cares way too much about what everybody else thinks about us. And I'm right there with you, like I get it. I'm talking to myself too. Naturally, in my flesh, I care a lot about what people think about me. I want people to think I'm awesome. Like I can just be for real. It's my personality type, and I want people to think I'm awesome in my flesh. And I've got to come and deal with that spiritually and go, you know what? I've got to do what's right. And if people don't get it, or people don't think I'm awesome and think I'm great because I'm going to do what's right, then so be it. God's in charge of my days. Number 2, we have enough time for everything that needs to be done. We have enough time for everything that needs to be done. God has given us a certain amount of time, and though that time is allotted and nothing can shorten it, that time is enough time to do everything that God has purposed for us. Okay? Think through that now. It is a limited amount of time, correct? God has given your life a limited amount of time. But the purposes for which you exist will be accomplished in that allotted amount of time. So here's what we need to do. We need to spend our time on the stuff that matters. Right? We need to make priorities in our life. And we need to focus on the stuff that ultimately really matters and accomplish the things that ultimately really matter. We as believers live in a culture of frantic people. Work is pressing in on us, school is pressing in on us, the necessities of life are pressing in on us, the crowd is pressing in on us, and time seems to be slipping away. And the older you get, listen, every generation hears this, and it's true. The older you get, the faster things fly by. The quicker everything goes. And if you're not careful, you can get frantic. And you can think, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to accomplish this, that. And that's not God's view of time. God doesn't go, okay, now everybody freak out because you only have a little bit of time left. It's not what God does. God says, there are purposes that you exist. There are reasons why you exist. Focus on those things. Accomplish those things in the allotted amount of time that you have. And then number 3, we have only a certain amount of time, and it shouldn't be wasted. God has given us a certain amount of time, and though we have sufficient time to do all the things that God has given us to do, nevertheless, we only have that amount of time, and let's not waste it. So you do have a set period by God that you're going to live. Your 12 hours of your day life, right? Use the analogy. That's all you got. And though that is sufficient time to accomplish God's purposes in your life, at the same time, we've got to be focused not to waste it. Listen to me. Look at me, we're almost done. I want you to look at me. There are so many people wasting their life in our world. They are living for things that do not satisfy. They're chasing after things that do not give them ultimate joy and happiness and fulfillment. They are running after it, and they're running after it, and they're running after it. And all they're going to find out in the end is that I wasted all of that time. I wasted it. The only thing that's going to matter, listen to me, listen. I promise you, I don't say this stuff just so I can preach a good sermon and we can leave. I say this stuff because it matters. And if you can get it, if it can just somehow sink down deep, and I know the Holy Spirit's got to do it, but if this could just sink down deep inside of you and just sit there and then grow and grow. Listen, in the end of your life, you are not going to care about anything but just a few little things. What impact did I make on the people who knew me best? And did I live for Jesus? And that is all that will matter. Outside of that, it really won't matter. Nobody talks at a funeral about what size house somebody had. Nobody talks about, you know what, when they were 33, they drove this kind of car and everybody thought they were great and it was a beautiful thing. When I go to Christian funerals, I preach some of them myself, and that body is that dead, sleeping body is laying in the casket. The funerals that bring people joy, the funerals that bless everyone's heart, the funerals that honor that person are the funerals where people get up and say, you know how this person lived? They lived to love others and love God. That's what mattered. And they didn't waste their lives chasing stuff that really didn't matter. And there is only two kinds of people in this room. Listen to me. There are two kinds of people in this room. There are people in this room who will waste their life, and your funeral will be pathetic. I've been to those as well. Or there's people whose lives are going to matter because they decided, in this set amount of time that I've got, I'm going to live for the glory of God. And I'm going to love people. And when my life's over, I want people to say, now there lies a person who loved God and loved people. That's what's going to matter. We have to make a decision. I don't care how young you are. Mary carried Jesus when she was a teenager. David killed Goliath when he was a teenager. You have to make your mind up right now. Lord, settle this in my heart and may it grow in me that the desire of my life, that I'm going to spend my life loving God and loving people and making my life count and not wasting it. Listen, I don't want to say what I'm about to say, but I will, and then we'll end. I will be at some of your funerals. I will be. Unless the Lord takes me in natural course of things, something's going to happen to one of y'all before it happens to me. I'm going to be at your funerals. And my fear is your funeral is going to be a very sad funeral. Because in my mind, I'll be going, man, they just wasted it. Just wasted it. I pray my fear is wrong. My prayer is that God gets a hold of all of us. I pray the same thing for me. I pray if I die before all y'all and y'all come to my funeral, that y'all say, there lies the sleeping body of Neil Salmon. That's a guy who loved us and loved Jesus. And I'm good. That's it. That's what's said at my funeral. I'm good. I'm like, it's back up. That's what it's all about.